Hi, I'm Dr. Jim.
And I'm Dr. Janine.
Welcome back to our series on tests you need to do to help you to understand what's going on with the cardiovascular health and how to reverse it.
Right. If you don't know what you're dealing with, how do you know what to do for it?
Right.
So today, we did the NMR last time, and the NMR, gave you a lot of information. But one thing it didn't tell you is
Oxidized LDL. And I would venture to say that no matter what kind of cardiology people you have working with you and so on, you've probably never had the oxidized LDL fraction done.
no, even though the research out about it has been out for years. You always hear, how come my doctor doesn't test it? Okay, one reason that it's not tested is because most insurance companies won't pay for it. And then most insurance won't pay for it because there's not a drug to treat it. So just because there's not a drug to treat it does not mean you don't need to know if it's there. It means you really need to know it's there and do what it takes to change it so that you don't have the cardiovascular risk. So first, okay, what is oxidized LDL?
That there's the native cholesterol, and that native LDL particle is basically the one that our liver makes and puts out in the body. It's what our body uses. And the oxidized LDL is one that's damaged. Basically, it's oxidative damage that causes a problem with it. Now, when it becomes oxidized, it's seeking an electron. So now it's going to seek one. Anything it bumps into, it's going to seek an electron, trying to get it back into that normal state. Basic chemistry. Okay, the problem is when it's oxidized and it goes in and out of our cells, it gets stuck because it's seeking that electron. So if it goes into the cell to do its normal job, like native LDL does, native LDL goes in, comes back out, gets in the bloodstream, goes about its business, no big deal. Oxidized LDL gets trapped. And then it brings in things like macrophages and foam cells start. And when foam cells start, now you've got atherosclerosis starting.
Right. And that's when you start with plaque. And a lot of the research done on cadavers, the cholesterol that is in plaque is oxidized. So it is a very important thing to know if your LDL is oxidized or not. Because you can actually have low LDLs and not be elevated, but they could still all be oxidized. And if they're all oxidized, it's still a cardiovascular risk. So that's why it is so important for you to have an oxidized LDL done. Now, the range on the oxidized LDL is actually a little wider than I believe it should be. We like it to be a lot lower than the range. The range, I believe, is 0 to 170.
A lot of your authors that are into the science part of it say that we want to keep it as below 50 as near as possible.
And you can change it. We've had many people that we've changed their oxidized LDL. We do it all the time because it's a test that we do regularly. It is in our super cardiac panel, or you can add it to any other panel that we do, or you can do it by itself. We actually can do just a single test. When we see that it's elevated or toward the higher end even, there is many things that you can do to change it. It's not just one thing. Now, we know that diet can change it. And diet, eating better, eating more antioxidant foods, eating less of the damaging oxidized oils, which is a really big thing to increase oxidized LDL.
There's something really kind of sad about the whole problem with this. People talk about the seed oils, or it's oxidized linoleic acid mostly. We've known about this since back, if you look at the research, back into the 60s and 70s, it was known that it wasn't the native cholesterol doing the problem. It was the oxidized, damaged and to your cholesterol. And that's the one that caused the problems. And, when it's been around since the 70s that we knew for a fact that this was a problem, and yet it's not done routinely.
And then 50 years later, they are still not doing anything because there's still not a medication for it. Unfortunately, medicine today is if there's not a medication, then it must not exist. Or we know it exists, but we're not going to pay attention to it because we can't do nothing for it anyway.
That's true.
But you can do something for it. So again, diet change, getting off of any oils that oxidize rapidly. You want to eat a high antioxidant diet. And then there's quite a few supplements that we have found that actually lower the oxidized LDL. Your ECGC in green tea is one of them. Our green tea max is a 95% ECGC, which is a very high amount. And we do see a good result with that. We have L-carnitine can make a difference. Luteolin makes a big difference. You know, I had a case where the guy's was huge. It was, it was like 1,400. We even talked to one of the researchers at Cleveland Heart Institute that said he had never seen it that high. The guy works with some pretty bad chemicals, and we have lowered his, not all the way where I would like it, but I mean, we've lowered. It's only been like a month or two that we've dealt with him, and we've already lowered it like 400 points. So it can make a big difference, and what you're around makes a difference. Your environmental factors make a difference. So you just got to figure out why your LDL is oxidized if you have an extreme amount.
The most important thing is to know what your value is. That's the most important. That's why we say that this is probably one of the most important tests that you can actually add to any cholesterol management that you've got.
Yeah. And if you're worried about cardiovascular disease, you really need to know where your oxidized LDL is.
And if you've got cardiovascular disease and you want to try to reverse it, you really have to know where this one is.
Yeah, you got to know where you're starting, and then you can recheck and see how you're progressing.
Right.
That's the only way to know is to test, and then do what you can, see if what you're doing is changing it. If it's not changing it, you got to go in a different direction. So that's kind of how we approach things is, see if it's working.
Yeah.
And the test will tell you. So if you liked this video and you hadn't watched the previous ones, maybe you want to go back and watch some of the previous ones. And then we have more coming on cardiovascular risk factors. And our next video is going to be lipoprotein A.